and unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words, and unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words, and unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good morning. My name is Susan O'Connell, and I lived, past tense, at the San Francisco Zen Center for about 28 years, 8 of which were here at Green Gulch, and as Timo reminded me, 5 of which were in room 5 in Cloud Hall. So it's lovely to be back, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak, and let's see how it goes. So I don't know about you, but my emails and texts and Facebook feed have been full of recommendations on how to live with the challenges that are currently manifesting, in particular with the new composition of our government. In that feed, there's a statement that I came across I wanted to read. As I finally allow the unimaginable and let myself go to bed with a cup of warm milk, I ask myself, what can I do tomorrow to help ease whatever pain I encounter? Mine, my friends, strangers. And what understandings and practices offered in our lineage can encourage healing, allow for grieving, include those who want to celebrate, and help initiate conversations about what is important. And what is important? The planet, our children, our human ability to love, and to understand that we are not separate. This was written on November 8th, 2016, by me. Reading these thoughts from 8 years ago highlights one of the many insights that's come up for me this week. We have been here before. And while it's not exactly the same, we have previously encountered drastic changes, and not just in politics, but in weather, in health, like COVID. Who imagined COVID, right? Technology, just like the internet itself, and now AI. Yet, even though we've been here before, I find myself feeling like I need to consider new pathways for stabilizing and being able to encourage in myself and others skillful responses to what is. Beginning with complete acceptance of what is. Not wasting energy on wishing it were otherwise. Because it can't be otherwise. This, of course, does not mean acquiescence. It means establishing stillness and balance to allow for skillful responses to arise. It does mean doing our best to be non-reactive. You may have noticed this, but one of the best things to do when feeling personally rattled or discouraged or even outraged is to see how we can attend to the needs of others. Shifting the attention from myself and my personal concerns frees me from the strong pull of depression and despair. So in that light, I am very fortunate that I was asked to give this talk. Over the past few weeks, rather than fussing too much and stewing and worrying about me, I was able to focus on what I may be able to do or say to help you. May it be so. I began in earnest to think about this talk 2 weeks ago, which was a fool's errand. How could I ever know what would be the most helpful thing to offer that far ahead at a time as dynamic as this? I reached out to a Dharma sister, and we joked that maybe by November 10th, we would still not know the outcome of the election, so my talk could be about not knowing. That'd be good, right? We have a lot of teachings about not knowing. Or, this was her idea, I could prepare 2 talks, right? one about fear and one about joy, right? And then she said, and then I should bring them here, both of them, not tell you which one was in which hand, and say, which one do you want me to give, right? So that was the kind of environment about thinking about what I might say. So as I told you, I've lived at the San Francisco Zen Center for 28 years, and I recently moved to our senior community called Ando Village, which is filled with like-hearted elders, many of whom are teachers, have been teachers here at Green Gulch and in the city. When the election results were clear, my body felt like it had been hit by a Mack truck. And I had a sleepless night, much like the one I had in 2016. My first response that night was dread. For others, it was anger or despair. However, the next day, the beauty of living in community was apparent. The meditation hall was open all day for quiet contemplation, for soothing silence. And then there were 2 spontaneous gatherings of residents in which people and staff, residents and staff, spoke from their hearts. And with that, my heart started calming down, and I had a deep, maybe this deep appreciation is what calmed me down, a deep appreciation for feeling the friendship and support of Sangha. You've all come here today possibly because you intuit that the power and spaciousness of Sangha can hold and uphold your entire range of experience. I highly recommend that you continue to seek out other hands to hold and spaces where you can express the full range of your responses. So congratulations on getting here. Because this is a Dharma talk and not a political action committee, I want to look at some teachings that have arisen for me in the past few days. And they're related to having a view of the world that will help me steer away from debilitating fear and hate and anger. I'm not very good with fear and hate and anger. Not very skilled. Another Dharma sister, I don't know if she's here today, but Sonia Gard-Schwartz, forwarded a statement in that flurry of people sending out things to help us, help our hearts. And she had received this from a Rabbi Erwin Keller a few days before the election. So here are some excerpts. Probably he's an expert too, but excerpts. He said, I don't know what's going to happen next week, but I want us to remember that the time that we are in is much bigger than the election. Our role is bigger than getting particular individuals into office. There is a field. I don't know what to call it. A spiritual field, a cultural field, a metaphysical field that needs to be restored and protected. It is formed of our greatest communitarian values, being kind and holding fast. We are here to be guardians of the field, guardians of a wholeness that has become torn and tattered. So let us be guardians of the field. Let us infuse it with values of kindness and peace and the ever rarer respect. Let us not succumb to feeling alone and insignificant, because we are not alone and we are not insignificant. We are here with each other. So, thank you, Rabbi Keller. Guardians of the field. Every morning, here and in other meditation situations, we put on our robes after meditation and we recite a short chant, part of which says, "Great robe of liberation, field far beyond form and emptiness." This is the same field that I think the rabbi is talking about. It's the vast field of connection that is not hindered. This field is also related to the vastness aspect of the Bodhisattva vows. In these vows, which we're going to recite later, we talk about numberless beings to be liberated, inexhaustible delusions to be ended, countless Dharma gates to be entered, and the vow to be an embodiment of awakening. Vast. You may have heard of Michelle Obama saying, "When they go low, we go high." I'm suggesting that when we humans are tempted to shrink our views to the personal and painful, it can be helpful to consider the limitless context of that pain. So, do we go low or do we go wide? Your practice has probably shown you that we're not actually in control of our circumstances. You may have noticed. There are an infinite number of causes and conditions from beginningless time that affect each activity, each thought, in meditation, you may notice that we don't even really control or generate our own thoughts. Have you ever followed a thought to its kind of genesis, to its birth, and seen that the impetus for the content of the thought was the sound of a bird call or the sniffling of the person next to you? They're not even our thoughts. In this vast field of existence, the fabric of our world can get torn and faded. We are not in control, but we can clearly observe. We can clearly observe the tears in the fabric. And as I was writing this, it occurred to me for the very first time that the word tears and tears is the same word. Right? So if you find yourself weeping, Emily weeps a lot. Remember, we don't need to create this field of kindness, of respectful consideration. We merely need to mend the torn fabric. Field doesn't disappear in times of disappointment. It merely appears damaged. The appearance of damage is something that can be changed, since the damage is something we place onto the inconceivable field. We see damage, we can unsee it. We can repair this appearance of damage by moving the light a little bit closer and appreciating the beauty of the weave in the field of love. How you doing? Okay, well, I want to check, because if this emphasis on a wide field, or even the word love, is making you uncomfortable, if you feel reactive to this spaciousness that I'm offering, if you think that love is not enough of the answer to the situation, or if you're feeling like there's too much to do for you to waste time on context, then maybe you need to stay engaged with the pain or anger or despair that you're feeling for a little bit longer. But when and if the pain is so strong that it keeps us from being able to step out again into the light, the awareness of the field beyond form and emptiness, the ultimately indestructible field of love and respect, this field can be the balm that we need to staunch the bleeding. So just check on how you're doing with that level of pain or that engagement with anger. How's it going for you? Do you need to stay there a while longer? Or can you give yourself the sweetness? The sweetness. So I propose that this wide field that is another name for love and interconnection, it's there for us to swim in and be refreshed and healed. So there's an awareness that this field is there. There's faith that it's indestructible. And there are practices that help us navigate away from fear and hate and move more towards balance, more towards this field of light. I want to share briefly a new practice that came up for me. But I also want to save time for questions. So I'm going to talk about this for a little bit because I want us to be able to connect and experience the value of community. Okay? So this new practice for me came up in the form of a vow that took shape on Wednesday morning. And when it first came up for me, I felt a deep sense of relief and release. So here's the vow. It's a set series of vows. And I know that by saying them in public, yeah, ceremony. Ooh. Oh. Boy. Okay. I vow to love the people who voted differently from me. I vow to understand their pain and their needs because that's where we can meet. I vow to remember that their pain is real. What is different is the way we prefer to go about easing the pain. I vow to be aware when I praise self at the expense of other, thinking that I hold the key to what is good and right. I don't intend to change my values, but I do intend to reconsider how far I have been thoughtlessly leaning to the left, and/or I want to reconsider the orientation of my solution and strategies. Where are they coming from? I want to examine my own privilege, my own sense of safety. I vow to reconsider my definition of harmony. I think I've been mistaken in my picture of a harmonious world where everyone is converted to my way of thinking. Even though I know that's not really what I would normally say, I know that's not possible, but deep down, I think it's tied to this idea that we're going to save everybody before we leave. This kind of everybody's going to be saved. And like, what does that mean? Everybody can be saved. But in the way that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. I remember when my mother asked me to come and go to some doctor's appointments with her, which was a very rare occurrence, but I thought, okay, she's asking me to be with her. And in the course of these appointments, it was clear that she was very sick, and in fact, she died a couple of weeks later. But I was in this situation with her, and fostered by the intensity of the situation. So I mentioned earlier that a lot of things are occurring now to me because of the intensity of the situation. So it's actually a beneficial time to be paying attention to what one's instincts are bringing forward. So in this situation with my mother, the thought arose in me to no longer try to convert her to my point of view. My whole adult life, you don't understand me. I want you to see me the way I want you to see me. So what happened was this vow just sort of took root. This attitude, this shift of view took root. And I went to bridge games with her and sat in the corner and just watched her. With no judgment. And I was able to tend to her. And this shift in me allowed us to travel that pathway to her death in a peaceful, loving coexistence. It was a wonderful lesson. So what does it mean to question some of my liberal views? What did I not see? What was in the way of my seeing? There's a section, a chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra that mentions 4 qualities. So if you come to these talks, you'll notice that we have these trellises on which we build our talks sometimes. We've got the precepts, we've got the 4 this and the 8 that, and it really helps to be able to sort of get to the bottom of what we're trying to say. So here are 4 qualities that are mentioned in this chapter of the Lotus Sutra that I'm considering how they can help me do the things that I just vowed to do. And these 4 qualities are being soft and flexible. I like that one. Receptive. Being peaceful. Well, what does that take in these times? Being honest about my intentions, maybe. Examining my views. And being straightforward. And it's said in this chapter 16 that when beings manifest these qualities, Buddhas appear in the world and teach. Wouldn't that be nice? So, that's all I prepared because, like I said, I really would like to hear your comments, your concerns, and we can meet in this way. So I think this is how it works, that you just bring the microphone to...
That's right,
okay.
Yeah. Because we want our online folks to also hear. So raise your hand if you have a comment or a question, and I'll bring the mic over. Don't be shy.
Hi, thank you very much. That was helpful. I think what's been so confusing about this for me, and I don't really know how to unravel it, is that my thought is that I understand that we're all good people. I know that for a fact because there's many people that I love that voted differently. And yet, at the same time, the only way that I can rationalize this is that there's some level of, it's a lack of understanding and a lack of accurate information because of, what's happening with the way that the media bubbles are set up and so forth. And yet, I've been told that this is false. That no, there's plenty of people that know exactly what they're doing, and this is how they decided to vote. And so, I don't really know what my question is. I feel such a lack of, just so distraught about how really good people could vote for someone who seems so, depraved, I guess.
So, it's really hard to stay on that level of discourse because it doesn't make sense, right? What I was suggesting, and this is, like I say, we may not be ready for this yet. We may need to stay in that kind of level of discourse and questioning. But if you go, I would say, deeper than whether people are good or bad or uninformed or whatever, and just try to understand they're in pain. People are in pain. We're all in pain. What kind of pain is it? Be curious about the pain. Is it survival pain? Is it financial? Is it identity? They're in pain. And it's bad pain, right? So choices were made, things were believed, filtered through their pain. People made decisions that they thought they're not going to make a decision they think won't help them, so they think it'll help them. But the confusion coming from that's a wrong decision isn't going to help you, right? Letting the sediment settle and go, slightly deeper into your own humanness. You've got pain. You're afraid. How to connect on that, at least first intellectually, and then maybe seeking out people and having a conversation about pain. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, excuse me.
We have a question from Zoom, coming from Kylie. Can you please share the rabbi's beautiful offering again? Thank you.
Would you like that? Okay. This is an excerpt. His statement was, in fact, a little bit longer, but he said, I don't know what's going to happen next week, but I want us to remember that the time we are in is much bigger than the election. Our role is bigger than getting particular individuals into office. There is a field. I don't know what to call it. A spiritual field, a cultural field, a metaphysical field that needs to be restored and protected. It is formed of our greatest communitarian values, being kind and holding fast. We are here to be guardians of the field, guardians of a wholeness that has become torn and tattered. So let us be guardians of the field. Let us infuse it with the values of kindness and peace and the ever rarer respect. Let us not succumb to feeling alone and insignificant, because we are not alone and we are not insignificant. We are here with each other.
Thank you for your talk. I am a volunteer for suicide prevention, and I answer the phones. And yesterday, I was talking with an 83-year-old woman who is anxious, lonely, and feels hopeless. Mm-hmm. And as we were going along and I was connecting with her, all of a sudden she started to talk about she has 4 children, 2 boys and 2 children. 2 boys and 2 girls. And politically, 2 of them are liberal and the other 2 are Trumpists. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to this, and then she starts to talk about, as far as Trump, I think we need to give him a chance. And I listened to Fox and Friends. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling a lot of judgment, and I'm supposed to help her. And I realized this, and I let it go. And I just kept connecting with her. And at the end of it, she said how much she likes to talk with me. And that I am sincere. I thought that was incredible. So what you had to say about connecting, being aware of the pain, and then what we do with it is different, is true. I think that's one of the first times I ever let go of my judgment in this context.
Yeah. That is a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing it. That's an exact example of what the picture that I was trying to paint. These are amazingly difficult times. Of course, people say that in every time, right? But however, if the urgency of the times causes us to go deeper, to question more, this is our job. This is, how do we heal the field? We see it first. You have to see where the tear is in ourselves, right? To be able to heal it. So I'm so happy for you that you had that experience. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for bringing up this subject. I really like this concept you're working with of the wider field, and I like that you're talking about multiple faiths. You're talking about a rabbi, a Jewish man. I think that's something we should really consider, and I've been reflecting on when we take our votes, whether it was for somebody of course it's for somebody we support out of the two choices primarily. I hope that I could encourage all of us to consider what we look past when we vote, even if we think we're right. I think there's plenty of people that would criticize our votes, not just for president. So I think these blind spots that we might not want to hear about, or might say to ourselves, no, of course not. We considered it completely. But are we really in that wider field considering that? I think that's something that I want to pose.
Yeah.
And just the interfaith aspect of the rabbi in particular, I think is encouraging. So I just hope we occupy that wider field and really step back and examine this deeper than the deepest we think we can go. So thank you for encouraging us to consider that concept.
I mentioned that I live at Zesho Village, which is called a Zen-inspired senior living community, and there are a lot of Zen folk there. And there are Sufis, and there are Wiccan, and there are Jewish people, and there are Catholic people, and it's grown into this wonderful soup which takes aging and includes mind, body, heart, and spirit. So it's in a way, it's Zen-inspired, and there's a meditation hall in the middle of it, and teachings and meditation, and there's this wide range of approaches. And I've noticed there, it started out, everyone thinking they had the best practice, right? And there was some tussling that went in around the use of the Zendo. And the Vipassana people didn't like it that we faced the wall. They don't face the wall, right? And the altar was in the wrong place. How could the altar be there? Can't we move the altar when we come in? And there was this tussling for identity when we first opened. And it was painful because they were pushing against the Zen stuff, right? We're as important as Zen. My practice is better. I'm a Sufi. I do Diamond Heart, and so people have started to come forward and make their offerings and see who shows up, right? And if there's 2 people, it's like, oh, interesting, And so, but at this point, what's happening, it's taken a year, people are tiptoeing into each other's teachings. So I listened to a woman the other day who was teaching about Diamond Heart, which I know a little bit. I know some people who have done it, and I thought I might know a little, but I listened to her describe the history of it. And this is a person that I don't really vibrate well with in the community. And there they were doing this teaching, doing a great job. I got to see them at their best. And which happens sometimes when you teach, you're kind of if you're lucky, you're kind of at your best. And so watching each other teach and tasting pieces of other people's practice. So don't you think it's starting to happen there? Yeah. Emila lives there with me, yes. Oh, you have the microphone, and there was a question over there.
Sorry for crossing in front of you.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming. I've been kind of at the Zen Center San Francisco here on and off for years, and I now have a 9-year-old little girl. And I remember when she was born, I was sitting here pregnant, and someone said, or a monk said, you have to be the calm in others' storm. And the entire time I was raising her terrible 2s and 3s, be the calm in her storm, and I wanted to cry, right? But one of the things I also realized is you have to model inclusivity and acceptance. So if you're liberal or Republican or whatever, you want someone to accept your values, you need to accept theirs. Or if you don't really agree with Fox, maybe you think that they're not correct. Well, that person might not think that The Economist or the Scientific American's correct. And it's like, how do you model inclusivity to each other by seeing value in all the perspectives? And so funny, what is it, that book, like everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. As a mom, I realized all the Buddhist teachings, all the years infused, it really goes back to those really fundamental things you learn as a child and just kind of returning to them. So I thank you for holding space, but also just, for the next generation, how do we model inclusivity? And so for every birthday party, I invite the whole grade, even though I'm a single mom, and I can barely afford that because that doesn't happen a lot. And I know every kid likes an invitation, a cupcake, right? So I just keep trying to model it. And that's how I'm handling this moment personally. Yeah. But I don't know. Thank you for holding space for all of us.
Thank you for your mom practice.
We have another question here.
Thank you so much for your talk. For me personally, and I think for probably many in this room, the pain that I felt on Wednesday morning is not really related to myself so much as the folks that are in my community who are actually at risk of, for instance, having to leave the country. And I'm confused oftentimes sitting in compassion practice, for instance, of what to do with that sense. And I've heard, for instance, this practice of imagining a child floating down a river and the mother's on the shore and the mother's armless, and imagine what that mother's feeling. And that brings up so much pain. And that's similar to how I feel about some of the people who are in my community who are truly afraid right now. Whereas my life over the next few years probably is not going to be changed very much. And I'm afraid for the wildlife on this planet. I'm afraid for many things that are abstract and not really relatable necessarily in my personal day-to-day existence. But I could sort of float through the next few years and be fairly content walking through the park on a sunny day. And I'm not really sure what to do with that secondary pain. And if you could comment on that at all.
Yeah, thank you. There's a wonderful Tibetan Buddhist practice called Tonglin. So you talked about taking in, you imagining the pain of people you love, people you don't even know, right? and bringing it into your heart. That's an intense practice. You should start in small doses. The baby with the armless mother does not seem like a good starting point, right? So finding your way slowly through your ability to tolerate. You don't want to be overwhelmed because then you won't be able to do the next step. So it's not just about taking the pain in. It's about sending out healing and love. It's a two-way process. It's an inhale and an exhale. You're not stuck just in the pain. You draw on this indestructible field to send back out healing. So that's the imaginary process, right? How that manifests in the world with your actions, I don't know. But if it can start with training yourself to be able to acknowledge pain and acknowledge that there is the capacity in you to meet it, you're the solution. Okay?
I have a question about...
I can't see. Maybe the person could stand up.
Hi.
Thank you.
I have a question about the harm, I suppose. I work in a school with a lot of kids who are really afraid right now because they come from families that might be affected by this administration. And I wonder about, we talk a lot about love and about loving people, and I believe in that really strongly, and I think that sometimes there are things that have to be stopped. And I wonder about the duality of that, how to reconcile that.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that's in many other people's minds. I deliberately did not want to talk about solutions, activities, because I do think our first responsibility is to calm down and settle and find a place of non-judgment. And then, again, I think because of the intensity of the moment or of your situation when you're with these children and the fear level, in a calm, centered, receptive place, the thought of what to do will arise. And it will be much more effective, whatever it is, if you're not being swung about by the same fear that you're feeling in the children. So it's not a kind of a duality where one side is pushing against the other. It's a step process of what's most important. Calm down. You may have to go through your own fear to do that, right? Feel that fear. I was driving here with my friend Emila, and I could feel in my body, she said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Well, of course I'm nervous." And it feels like I've had a lot of surgeries. And so I have had the experience of being on the gurney, being wheeled towards the operating room. You know, you see all those lights going above you. And even though I'm, meditating and talking to myself, my body knows where it's going. My body knows it's going to go get cut. So in this talk, my body knew where it was going. It was feeling, this. And Emila was very, very, very happy about something. Very happy. And her energy was just like, poof, poof, poof. She was so happy, and I was so happy for her. But I had to say to her, "You're on fire, my friend, and I need to calm down more right now. I can't join you in the fire. I need cool breeze. I need something else And she immediately, of course, understood. But that was me calming myself down to be able to come and be with you. So that's my response to your question.
Reverend Susan, we have time for one more.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah,
Was there
sure.
one person over here?
Yeah.
Would you mind, Oshi?
Thank you very much for your talk. I'm not from U.S., but I've been living here and hearing from everybody and comparing this problem to the problems in Gaza, in Iran, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, lots of places in the world. I don't want to say this is nothing, but I think you have to compare your situation to the rest of the world. And I don't want to say whining and crying, but what you're dealing for the next 4 years is not going to be that much worse than the 4 years that he was in power. But I think to calm ourselves down and have acceptance, we have to look at the rest of the world. And the cause in all, I shouldn't say all, majority of the problems in the rest of the world is right here in this country. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, there's, maybe I want to appreciate what you said, and I feel aligned with it. And I think in myself, sometimes I forget my privilege. I forget how safe I am, you know, and so that's part of my vow is to start to question how I hold all this information and et cetera. So, and this is where we are. So it's like act locally, do something else globally. What? Think globally, right? So, so it's, you know, how to help with the pain and the war in Gaza and all kinds of other places. People have many jobs that actually are part of that process of figuring out how to help. And this is kind of a local problem that we have. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for your involvement, and be kind to each other, hold each other's hands. Okay. And I'm looking at the bell person because I'm going to do this. You, okay. Being and Uncert, what? No, beings, right? Beings are numberless. No? May our intention equal